Mr. Chairman, we are ready when you are.
Good morning. My name is Andy Bonner, and I serve as chairman of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. Today is April the 30th, 2024, and I'd like to call this meeting of the State Board of Accountancy in order. Notice of the April meeting of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy, including date, time, and location, has been properly noticed, and copies of the agenda were posted to the Board of Accountancy website on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. Individuals who wish to make a public comment on an item listed on the posted agenda during the scheduled public comment period will need to sign in on the provided sign-in sheet right in the back next to the cooler, or by placing your name in the chat box online if you're online. At this point, I'd like to ask Karen to do a roll call to confirm a quorum in the room.
Andy Bonner,
Present.
Greg Gilbert,
Present.
Sam Bennett,
Present.
Janet Booker Davis,
Here.
Pam Church,
Here.
David Crenshaw,
Here.
Brad Floyd,
Here.
John Griesbeck,
Here.
Kevin Monroe, Rob Vance.
Present.
All right, thank you, Karen. Want to welcome our visitors today and members of the public that have come here to join us. I want to remind you and all board members that please mute your cell phones if you have them and check them, make sure they're muted. Board members and also people who are here our guests here to speak, we're using some new technology today, and I have to say it's pretty impressive. It's fun to sit here and you can see when people speak from home, you can see that they pop up, but we have some new technology in the speaking side too, and it's really important that if you turn your mic on when you get finished, please turn it off, because only 4 mics at a time can be on. And yesterday, I think you'll remember, we had a couple instances where people tried to comment and hit their mic, and then they couldn't because we had 4 people on. So just remember that. So at this point, we'll continue on, and we need to review and adopt the agenda. And that's an action item. So I'll ask Karen, first of all, do we have any changes or any items on the agenda that need to be addressed? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Karen?
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Sam Bennett,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Brad Floyd,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe, Rob Vance.
Aye.
All right, next on the agenda is we've got to approve of our minutes from our last meeting. I have not heard of any changes to the minutes, and I will open this up right now to see if there are any changes to be noted. Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
So move.
Then a second?
Second.
Karen?
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Sam Bennett,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Brad Floyd,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe,
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
Next, we have our executive director's report, and Wendy Garvin, our executive director, I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everyone today. You have your my executive director's report was previously provided to you, and as typical, we'll start out with future meeting dates. We have the previously approved dates listed there of July 16th, 2024, October 22nd, 24, February 4th of 25, May 6th of 25, and the proposed date of July 29th, Tuesday, July 29th of 2025. So we'll vote on that at the end of my report. So just
Have a proposed date of July 29th, 2025 for our next board meeting. Oh, I got to hit. July 29th, 2025 for our next proposed board meeting. Do I have any comments, or do I have a motion to accept it?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none? Karen?
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Sam Bennett. Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Cam Church.
Aye.
David Crenshaw.
Aye.
Brad Floyd.
Aye.
John Griesbeck. Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
Thank you. Just a recap of upcoming NASBA meetings. We have the Eastern Regional meeting coming up June 4th through the 6th in Louisville, Kentucky. Andy, Greg, John, Pam, and I plan to attend. We're still waiting on final approval for that travel, but I don't expect any issues with that. We also have the Western Regional, and Kevin plans to attend that event. Those agendas are the same, so we'll be hearing the same information. And then the annual meeting is scheduled for October 27th through the 30th in Orlando, Florida, and we'll probably talk about that at the July meeting, who's interested in attending that. So since our last meeting, Duke, Neal, and I attended NASBA's Executive Director and Legal Conference, and it happened to be here in Nashville, so that was nice. We got to tour the NASBA offices, so that was interesting for us to kind of see their operations, walk around, talk to their different teams, and so that was a nice change of pace for that conference. We also discussed numerous topics, including the CPA evolution and the exam, the professional licensure task force, which Dan Dustin spoke on at the last meeting. We had some updates from that. And one of the interesting things, I think, for all of us was hearing from the Department of Labor and the PCAOB. So it was nice to connect and meet with those people and hear what's going on in their world and the referrals that they make to us. So nice to develop those relationships going forward. With regards to the exam, I did include some attachments here. There's a candidate fee letter as attachment 1 to my report. So there were some increases in fees as of January 1, mostly related to cost of living. And then the second attachment is the last quarter of 2023 exam performance. I realized after I put this together, I provided that to you at the last meeting as well. So you just have a duplicate of exam performance for the end of last year. So moving on, NASBA committee interest forms. They are in the process of recruiting volunteers for committee service. So if anyone is interested, please make your interest known. I believe the deadline is May 3rd for that. You did receive emails on March 2nd and March 20th giving you a listing of committees and what those services are, or what those responsibilities are to determine what your interests might be. Contracts. We have a contract with NASBA for examination review services where they review candidates' education and approve them to sit for the exam and then also for licensure. And that contract has been finalized as of yesterday. We got the final contract, and so we are good to go for the next several years, I think till 2028. So we are good there. And then we did finalize the memorandum of understanding with TSCPA to get some updated signatures there related to the state-specific ethics course. So those are all finalized. I've listed here the outreach that has been performed since the last meeting. I attended TSCPA's West Tennessee chapter meeting in late February. We also, Kara and I got our staff together and had basically a joint staff meeting where we discussed the various responsibilities among each of the parties and, got to meet. We did it in person, so we got to meet each other and find ways that we could support each other through the process. So we did that several years ago, so it was time to do that again. And then also April 3rd, Andy and I met with Kara and Jonathan Bailey, their chair, to just discuss kind of, again, what's going on in the profession and what the various organizations are doing, just to make sure we're continue to be in tune with what the other organization is doing. On April 8th and 9th, I attended the AICPA Board of Examiners meeting in Chicago. This was the first in-person meeting that we've had, and the goal there was to set the cut score for the discipline sections of the CPA exam. And so that was an interesting meeting. It's all very much led by psychometricians and the process for standard setting with regards to high-stakes exams and the scoring process. So that first score release on the discipline sections occurred on April 24th, I believe, and then we do expect the core sections to be released in early June, and I'll be going up later this week to work on the score cutting process for the core sections of the exam. The next section is the kind of just an update on renewals and where we are. We're doing really well with regards to the numbers of folks that have renewed so far. This is for individual licenses that expired 12/31 of 23. We have 8,001 that have renewed, and we still have 353 in expired grace status. We have, on the firm side, we have 1,683 firms that have renewed with 43 in expired grace status. So we will send another communication before the end of June, but that's when the license after June 30th, after June 30 is subject to reinstatement requirements. On the CPA side, that includes 80 penalty hours of CPE. So it's pretty daunting if you don't get that renewed in time. I've listed the performance metrics for January, February, and March there, including average number of days to license, the case and complaint performance that indicates how many cases we're able to resolve within 180 days. And as mentioned, we had dropped there due to 3 or 4 months more than a year ago that we didn't have an investigator, but we are ticking back up there. So as I expected, now that we are stable in that area. And then online adoption rate for the number of applications that are submitted online. And then finally, I have licenses issued, or more statistics, licenses issued. We did have a pretty good first quarter with 153 individual licenses issued, 19 firm permits. At the bottom of that page, you'll see new candidates to the CPA exam. That's a final tally for 2023. We had 637 new candidates enter the pipeline to take the exam. That is up from the prior 2 years. We did have a significant volume at the end of last year for folks rushing in to take the exam before the change over on January 1st of 24. And then you'll see the licensing statistics for individual CPA licenses and firms. We have, as of the end of March, we had 11,857 active CPAs and 1,724 active CPA firms. And that concludes my report, if there are any questions.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy? Seeing none, then we'll move forward to our peer review update. With us today, we have Sarah Hardy, a CPA. She is with the peer review committee, and she's the chair of that committee with the Tennessee Society of CPAs. So welcome, Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Hardy. I am the peer review chairman of the Tennessee committee, and I'm here to talk about peer review. Wendy, is the slide projecting on everyone's screens?
So, Sarah, we have it in the upper left corner. So
Okay.
give me a minute and let's see if we can switch it to where to make it larger scale.
New technology.
Yeah.
And this is pretty cool because this may be one of the first times we've been able to do this to where we can actually show your presentation on the screens and then broadcast it at the same time. So we're kind of excited about this. And as everybody in the room knows, anytime you have new technology, there's always something that you have to like, okay, how does this work? This didn't do right, you know, so.
I'm just grateful I'm not the one pressing the button. You're doing a great job, Wendy.
We're trying over here. We had it yesterday where Janet was front and center.
I am front and center again.
Okay, what about the view? Do that view again. What were we on before? Go to the other. Well. Yeah, but then he changed the speaker, or the,
Yeah, when it initially came up, Wendy, it had the presentation on the screen without some of the, well, without me, and then the other people in the room covering the presentation.
okay. You all do have this on your iPads, so if you want to refer to, I think it's peer review update on the iPads. And Sarah can work from there.
Okay. Okay, so moving on. The administrative team includes Kara Fitzgerald, she's our CPA on staff, Katie Cheek, Gina Carrata, and Art Sparks. Our enrollment over the last 10 years has been dropping in terms of number of firms. There are a few reasons for that. Mergers, I'm one of those. My firm merged this year, and retirements, firms no longer subject to peer review. It's not unique to Tennessee. It's happening across the A's and the nation. We're noticing that compression in the number of CPA firms. We have currently 493 enrolled firms in Tennessee. 44 of those are non-ANA firms. That means that they need to confirm annually that they are still not performing ANA work, and they will no longer be subject to peer review, even though they are in the program. We've been seeing about an average of 6% decline each year for the last 5 years. So there are two different types of peer reviews, engagement reviews and system reviews. The next slide that you have is about our acceptance rate for engagement reviews. In '23, we accepted about 88% of the engagement reviews. That's a little up from 2022 when we accepted only 82%. And small differences in the past with deficiencies and fail. In system reviews, our pass rate is pretty consistent, 23 when compared with 22. It is 84% in both years, some varying degrees of change for pass with deficiencies and fail. So, what do we do if a firm has a pass with deficiency or fail rating? We typically will assign corrective action. That corrective action is designed to be responsive to the systemic cause that created the pass with deficiency or fail report. A lot of the times we see peer reviewers noting human resources or lack of appropriate CPE as that systemic cause. Most of our corrective action, therefore, is CPE. More education for our firms about the accounting standards and the audit standards and the SAR standards. We also have at our disposal a post-issuance review or pre-issuance review of subsequent engagements. So, occasionally, we do have firms that are not cooperating with the program. Either they fail to schedule their peer review, they don't pay the administrative fees, that would result in a drop, as opposed to a termination in which the firm has failed to provide information to the peer reviewer, failed to perform corrective action that's been assigned by the report acceptance body. The difference for a drop versus a termination is the process of getting back in. So when you reinstate after a drop, that's an administrative process that can typically be handled at the TSCPA. If it is a termination for consecutive non-pass peer reviews or termination for failure to correct deficiencies after consecutive corrective action, that reinstatement needs to go through the AICPA peer review board. In terms of drops and terminations, in 23, we had 31 firms drop for failure to schedule, failure to pay the administrative fee. We only had 4 firms terminated for failure to complete corrective action or consecutive non-pass reports. The peer review program has an oversight process in which the AICPA comes to the TSCPA to make sure that we're administering their program appropriately. And they monitor 3 things. They observe the report acceptance body to make sure that we are prepared when we are discussing the reviews, to make sure that we're knowledgeable about the peer review standards and the underlying other professional standards. They also do benchmark reporting. They compare the TSCPA to other national benchmarks. And they will do an administrative oversight where they'll look at our processes about how we're moving the firms through the peer review program. We have had very favorable oversight reporting from the AICPA. In fact, the TSCPA was pretty instrumental in setting those benchmarks. And so our administrative process is running really smoothly, and the AICPA agrees with their oversight reporting. There are other oversight processes such as enhanced oversight over firms and reviewers. So the TSCPA goes through a risk assessment when determining which firms or reviewers should be selected for oversight. As the chair of the Tennessee Peer Review Committee, my name is pretty close to the top of that list, just out of fairness for that. Are there any questions about the program or our administration of it?
Any questions for Sarah? Kevin?
Sarah, not so much a question, but just a big thank you. I'm reminded that when it comes to peer review of I guess it was the first Harry Potter book where Dumbledore is awarding points to Neville Longbottom, and he says it's hard enough to stand up to one's enemies. It's much harder to stand up to one's friends. And really, with peer review, we are standing up for the profession, and so I just appreciate everything that you're doing and the committee is doing and the society is doing with respect to peer review, and just can't thank you enough.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Sarah, thank you for presenting for us today. My question is this. Some of the seminars that I've attended in the past few years, the speakers or presenters have noted that there's a drop in the number of peer reviewers. So is that still happening? And how many peer reviewers do we have in Tennessee? Do we know?
We do know, but I may need to get back
That's
with you
okay.
about
That's not
answer.
critical. Right.
We have been discussing in the peer review community the need to transition peer review practices because peer reviewers retire just like all other CPAs do. Because of the nature of peer review, it requires a lot of experience to get into it. And so by its very nature, a lot of our peer reviewers are approaching retirement age. It is a concern that we are trying to address.
Well, just to add, on behalf of the board, thank you so much for coming today and updating on this peer review program to us. Y'all do a fantastic job, and we're just happy to be in partnerships with Tennessee Society and appreciate you and your committee and all that you do for peer review.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. And with that, we'll bring up Kara Fitzgerald. Kara is our the president and CEO of the Tennessee Society of CPAs, and she's going to give us a TSCPA update. And Kara, welcome. I have to say that when we're on our calls with the board and the Tennessee Society, we really appreciate the workmanship that we have between the two groups, and we couldn't have a finer organization to work with as a State Board of Accountancy here. And I get out and I talk to other state boards, and they don't have that relationship with their society, and we really appreciate that and appreciate everybody in your organization.
Thank you, Chairman Bonner, and thank you, Wendy, for the invitation to present today. As Wendy mentioned in her report, we've had some opportunities over the last month or two to really be able to kind of integrate our two organizations and figure out ways that we can work together and talk about the issues that are facing our profession. It was great to get our staffs together. They talk to each other frequently on the phone or through email, so it was nice for them to get to meet face to face and understand kind of the roles and responsibilities of each of our respective organizations. And then we always enjoy when we bring our leadership of the society together with the chairman of this board and with Wendy to talk about some of the more national type issues facing the profession. So we always appreciate those opportunities. Today, I'm just going to give a brief update on some of the activities of the TSCPA. We just wrapped up our fiscal year end as of March 31st, and so want to report on some of the things that we did over the last 12 months and some of the things that we are focused on for the next year. On this slide, just to update you, kind of puts in perspective the Tennessee Society's membership as it relates to the stats that you all receive from Wendy as in regards to total licensees in Tennessee. You can see we have just under 8,000 licensed CPAs who are members of TSCPA. In the last fiscal year, we had very modest growth in our membership, which is good. We'd rather have modest growth than to have declines. We have seen declines in our successful candidate membership. That's a direct result of the declines that we are seeing in the numbers taking the CPA exam. So we have seen fewer successful candidates. Those are the individuals who have passed the exam who are not yet licensed that we extend a free membership to. So hopefully we'll start
start to see that number tick up. I do want to point out, because I'll talk a little bit throughout this presentation about some of the initiatives that we have related to pipeline. I want to point out our college student and high school student membership. You can see that's a significant part of our total membership, and we're proud to see those numbers continuing to increase. Last year, we expanded our student membership into high school, and we're glad to see that number starting to grow. And our goal in connecting with whether it's middle school, high school, or college is that we can shepherd them through the process as they go through their career development process, and that eventually they will join that number of licensed CPAs that you see on the screen. So our mission statement at the Society is to drive the success of our members and the communities they serve through connections, professional development, and advocacy. I think there's been a lot of opportunities in the last fiscal year to be able to do that, to serve our members and especially the communities they serve, and I'll hit on that in just a moment. Next slide. So in 2021, we went through a pretty detailed strategic planning process. These are the 5 priority areas that were the result of that strategic plan. A lot of these are not new. They're things that the Society has focused on for many years. Actually, this August, our Board of Directors will start a new strategic planning process. We are in the final year of this strategic plan, and so in August, they will start the process to kind of go into phase 2 of this plan. I don't expect that any of these 5 priority areas will change. I think they're all still very important to the profession and to our members, but we will potentially be looking at additional priority areas. How do we create sustainability of the profession and of the organization? The 2 of these priority areas that I'm probably going to touch on the most today will be advocacy and students and emerging professionals. So we all know that, over the last, 2 years, really, there has been a lot of talk nationally about the pipeline of future CPAs, and certainly TSCPA has dedicated a lot of resources to that area to develop relationships with students, and not only students, but also those emerging professionals who are just entering the profession. So creating relationships with them and providing value to them to be able to support them as they enter the profession. Many of you are familiar with our scholarship program. Last year, we awarded $275,000 in scholarships to Tennessee students. Last week, our Board of Directors met, and the Board of Directors of our Educational and Memorial Foundation approved that this year $280,000 will be awarded in scholarships. So our scholarship committee will meet in July and make those award determinations at that time. We spend a whole lot of time, if you follow us on social media, you probably see this, but we spend a lot of time out on college campuses, high school campuses, middle school campuses, connecting with students and faculty and teachers. Over the last 12 months, we're grateful to share about accounting careers with 565 high school students at our Discover Accounting program. That's a program on college campuses across the state. We visited with almost 800 elementary and middle school students doing presentations. Obviously, those presentations are much different than what we would do for a high school or college student. But again, trying to start early, talking about accounting, and then we reached 663 college students at almost 38 college events. So again, a very big part of our overall strategy, and a lot of resources are dedicated to pipeline and creating awareness about careers in accounting. Next slide, please. So over the last 12 months, in addition to the student initiatives that we've done, we've also been very engaged in the national conversation related to pipeline, both engaged with the National Pipeline Advisory Group, as well as recently learning about NASBA's structured professional program. So I guess it's been, 4 or 5 months at this point
Jonathan Bailey, chairman of our board of directors, and myself were invited to participate with, I think, between about 6 or 8 other state societies in a small group session with members of the National Pipeline Advisory Group to provide our thoughts and perspective on some of the root causes related to pipeline. Obviously, a lot of the conversation focused on the 150-hour requirement. But we were grateful to have that opportunity to share perspectives from TSCPA and from our members. Most recently, related to the pipeline, we have been sharing the National Pipeline Advisory Group's survey. They have both a survey for licensed CPAs as well as a survey for students. That group has been, all of their work has been very much rooted in data and research. And before they rushed to any type of strategy development, they wanted to make sure that they understood the data and the root causes. And so this is kind of the final step of that group to solidify their data. These surveys close on May 3rd. So if you have not responded to the survey, I encourage you to maybe to click on that QR code, and it's a very brief survey. They are very interested in student input, so if you have students in your life, please share this with them and ask them to respond. But again, it will close on Friday and no more responses will be taken. We do expect that we will learn more about this advisory group's strategy at the AICPA Council meeting in May. I believe that they are going to release their draft strategy mid-May, and so you'll probably see some press releases on that, and then we will learn more about it at the AICPA Council meeting. And certainly our board of directors at the TSCPA will take that strategy and identify how we integrate it into our overall strategic plan as far as pipeline goes. Next slide, please. So I mentioned, as we've engaged in the conversation around pipeline nationally, we were also encouraged in December to learn of NASBA's work to address pipeline and maybe come up with alternative ways for students to meet the academic requirements for licensure. Of course, we heard Nan Dustin speak about the structured professional program at this board's last meeting, and then I attended the NASBA Executive Director and Legal Conference in March and got an even greater understanding of that program, and so I'm grateful for NASBA for helping us to understand that. The Society is very supportive of any alternative pathways that are being considered. We certainly think that there is value in likely having more than one pathway to licensure. State societies as well as other stakeholders were invited to provide comment in regard to NASBA's concept exposure for their structured professional program. And so TSCPA did take the opportunity to submit a comment letter to NASBA by the March 31st date. I don't think that you have this letter in your materials. I think Wendy and Andy have seen it. I'm happy if you would like it. I'm happy to share this with any of you who would like to read our response. But just in summary, again, we're very supportive of looking at any alternative pathways. We did raise just a few questions or concerns about the overall program, and I'll just very quickly go through those. Mainly, is the model of the structured professional program scalable to firms of all sizes? So it was very helpful at the NASBA meeting to learn about how an individual would, identify the competencies that they are trying to master, and that they would have a CPA supervisor who would then basically determine if they have met that competency. And so our question was, is that model scalable to firms, large firms, down to even the smallest firms? We also raised the question of, in the proposed model, would mastery of the competencies, would that assessment be consistent? If you have CPA supervisors with varying levels of experience across the country determining whether that competency has met, can that consistently be applied, and how would they ensure consistency? Another question / concern was the fact that the SPP is kind of defined as a 2-year program. It doesn't seem to be scalable to individuals who might have graduated with an undergrad, maybe they have another degree, or whether maybe they have additional hours, and so may not need that full 2 years of of experience or education. And then lastly, probably the most significant comment in our letter was just kind of, asking if it provides additional value beyond an experience, beyond what an experience requirement would simply provide. We certainly don't encourage models or support models that will disrupt mobility. We do have concerns that maybe this model is overly complex and may not provide any additional value beyond what just an experience requirement would require. So again, we were happy to be able to provide our comment on that, and I'm happy to share that letter with any of you who would like to see it. Next slide, please. So I mentioned our scholarships. I think one of the most significant ways that TSCPA supports the pipeline is through our scholarship program. We, for many years, have been a leader in the amount of awards in dollars that we provide to students across the state. And so I just want to highlight this for anyone who may be watching the meeting today, that our scholarship application portal is open. Those applications are due by June 15th. And again, we'll be awarding $280,000 in awards this year. Next slide. So last week, we kicked off a campaign related to STEM. So this has been another hot topic of conversation over the last couple of years. Accounting is STEM. You see that on the slide. And so there has been federal legislation that has kind of been floating out there the last couple of years to incorporate accounting into STEM. Grant funding that would provide additional funding at the K through 12 levels that could be used for accounting education, and we think that's very important. We are joining other state societies and the AICPA in this campaign. So if you're a member of TSCPA, you probably got a dedicated email about this campaign last week. You'll be seeing lots of social media posts, and it's really just an opportunity over the next 3 to 4 weeks for us to help raise awareness of why we think accounting is part of STEM, and to hopefully increase the number of co-sponsors that we have on these bills that are with Congress right now. Again, we want to also raise awareness with college and university educators, and I've been going around the state meeting with a few different universities about potentially getting their accounting curriculums designated as STEM. So we hope to see some results of those meetings in the next year or two as well. So advocacy this year provided a lot of opportunities for us to advocate for our members and for our profession, both at the state level and at the federal level. You'll see this picture on the slide. That is from our Day on the Hill back in March. We had a great showing of members who participated in our Day on the Hill. We met with nearly 40 legislators, just talking to them about the profession and really encouraging them to use the profession as a resource to them as they serve the state of Tennessee. We had several bills that we monitored in total this year, about 66 bills we monitored. I have a few on the slide that were kind of the higher priority ones that we were monitoring. There was one occupational licensing bill that did end up passing. We engaged with Wendy some on this bill, just very high level. As initially written, the bill would have prohibited licensing authorities such as this board from automatically barring an individual from licensure because of a criminal record. And so we worked with the bill sponsor to explain why we view accounting as different than other occupations or professions. And in the final draft of the bill, I believe that there was some language added to say that vague terms such as good moral character or character and fitness cannot be used in a reason why you would not issue a license to an individual, and that boards such as the Board of Accountancy must explain how a specific conviction relates to the occupation or profession for which the license has been applied. We also monitored some changes to audit or review requirements related to contractors' licenses, as well as changes to the audit threshold for nonprofits. And then most notably, we were very engaged in the franchise tax legislation, which just passed last week. We sent out many emails to members informing them of this. You've probably read about it in the paper, so I won't go into great detail, but we did do some calls to action to our members to reach out to legislators. We had about 80 emails that were sent to state legislators expressing concerns over some components of the amended House bill. We are pleased where that ended up, and we'll be offering some courses to our members to be able to help them prepare for the franchise tax amendment and refund process that's resulting from that legislation. Next slide. At the national level, last May, we did have a delegation that visited DC and met with our U.S. senators and House members, spoke on a variety of issues related to STEM, financial reporting. We've also been very active at the federal level over the last 12 months on the beneficial ownership information reporting requirement. We've sent multiple letters advocating for a delay in the effective date. That was not successful. It went into effect. However, we continue to advocate to have that delayed. There's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, and lack of knowledge related to that reporting requirement. I know Wendy, as well as I, have gotten many questions from members. I just got some this morning, actually, about whether or not CPAs can provide that service to clients, and that continues to be kind of a debated and questioned service. And then I mentioned STEM already. We continue to advocate at this federal level for the STEM legislation. Next slide. And I just want to close in one thanking you again for the relationship that we have with this board and for the opportunity to present today. I want to invite you, as well as any other licensees who are watching today, to attend our 93rd annual meeting and convention. It will be in Kingsport, Tennessee. It's always a great time of learning, professional development, and networking. I know Wendy typically attends that and will provide an update at our governing council meeting. And so we would hope to see many of you there. And I'm happy to answer any questions, Chairman Bonner.
Any questions? Pam?
I have more comments. Thank you for your work on issues related to colleges. Small colleges, of course, nationally are hurting in this environment. And your work with the input about the experience program, as well as the STEM issues are very vital. So I think you were here, was it last time, that I expressed my opinion on the new program, and I am concerned about whether it really sets up something very complex that would be difficult to administer and does little beyond just an experience requirement. You expressed the items related to that program so well, so much better than I did, frankly, and I really appreciate it. So you talked about being scalable to smaller firms, and that's very important, I think, particularly for small schools as well. And then cost benefit, is that really there? And then the STEM issue, I've learned a lot since coming to Christian Brothers University, because a lot of our graduate students particularly are international students, and I didn't realize what a high percentage that was. And if they're coming over for a STEM program, it's much easier to get a visa and a more generous visa. So that could support those students and could support smaller schools and all schools. So, I think accounting is STEM, so I think that's appropriate. But thank you so much for that work.
Our pleasure.
Karen, thanks for being here. Do you recall any of the components or significant components of the changes to the contractor's licensing rules? And, we've had several cases over the past few years, and that's why I'm asking.
Let me pull out my notes. Okay, so it changed from an audit or review to a compilation for contractors seeking renewal of a license with a monetary limit exceeding 1.5 million. I know that we were kind of engaged, and then I think the Department of Commerce and Insurance kind of engaged on the final draft of that bill, so we kind of stepped out of that. But it basically lowered the requirement from an auditor review to a compilation.
I appreciate the presentation today. It was fantastic. The SPP parts that you went over with NASPA, one of our breakout sessions or our board sessions in last week, as a matter of fact, and our board meeting was the SPP program, and it answered. I think your questions were heard loud, not only yours but others across the U.S. From the different jurisdictions. That we have already started talking about some of the things that you proposed on the questions. A task force was put together with the AICPA and NASPA to come back with MPEG and SPP to actually look at the details now. And so that task force will have its first meeting in May. And so that's kind of exciting to see that, let's get to the details and figure out how it is going to work and what it can do. I think that the thing that we all strive for is to keep mobility, and that's the key. There's 7 or 8 states that have already started to adopt and make changes that could affect mobility. And so I think that we can get there. And so now through the Tennessee Society and specifically the questions you asked, I think we're starting to move in that direction. So I report good things because it was heard at the board meeting. So we appreciate it.
Great.
Any other questions for Kara? Seeing none. Thank you, Kara, for coming and being with us today. And it's just 9:30, and why don't we go ahead and get started on our board committee reports. First of all, I want to point out that our board staff person, Karen Condon, thank you for getting the technology working. That was great. I could see a little sweat over there, but you pulled it through. So always something with new technology, and that was exciting. Sitting next to her is Wendy, and of course Wendy had her report. But Neil, we got Neil Stauffer. Thank you. He's our legal associate that comes in and works with the board and actually on the committees, and we rely on him on a lot of aspects, and we appreciate that. And then next to him on the front row is Duke Speed, and of course he's our board investigator. And as we get into the enforcement side, Neil always has input there, and so does Duke. And so we appreciate all that y'all do. And I think as a board, we have some excellent staff members that we get to work with, and just wanted to make sure that they were, now that we have the ability to flip and look at everybody sitting on the row right there, that was the 4 individuals sitting while our speakers are speaking to let everybody online know who they are. With that, then we'll start with our chairman, Janet Booker Davis. Janet, you're front and center in the screen in front of us. It's good to see you. You're looking good. And we will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Chairman Bonner. I'm glad to be seen and not center screen for the whole meeting. The licensing committee has one item, action item today. And that item comes to us as a request from a CPA candidate and the University of Memphis, requesting the board to review their Cruz School of Accountancy course, ACC T3000, Career Development for Accounting Majors for Upper Division Accounting Credit. By way of background, this course was previously reviewed and it was denied. That was by NASPA based on the subject matter content from the syllabus not aligning with the subject matter content deemed acceptable under the rule 002002.021A 1.17. So the candidate and the University of Memphis submitted their request to the board to reconsider the course. And specifically, the University of Memphis is requesting consideration under Rule 0020-02-.02 1A18B. These rules are outlined in the meeting materials that we previewed, along with the request letters, the syllabus for the course catalog, and other relevant rules. So that rule that I just mentioned, it does give the board authority to consider this course outside of the listed subject matter content that was noted in Rule A1-17. So we did have discussion yesterday about the course and some additional information that we had requested and gotten from Dr. Lambert, the department chair, who has taught this accounting course 3000. And she confirmed that about 20% of the course content related to the practice set was a good estimate, and that this ACCT 3000 course has been replaced by a ACCT 3100, Foundations of Accounting. And they're both similar. They both include the practice set, as well as the other communications and job-related items that were in the old course. So after discussion, our committee voted to recommend to the board to approve the accounting course ACCT 3000 for upper level accounting education requirement for any candidate seeking CPA licensure in the state of Tennessee. So I would submit that as a motion to the full board from the licensing committee.
All right, thank you, Janet. Just to remind all the viewers and the people who are present today, our committees actually meet on the day before. The license committee actually adopted and approved this, and Janet has made a motion here. It comes to us as a motion, and so we need a second on that motion.
Second.
You are correct. My apologies. So at that point, I'll ask, is there any discussion among the board members?
Mr. Chairman, I would ask to be recused from voting on this item.
All righty. Karen, roll call or vote?
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Sam Bennett, Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Brad Floyd,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe,
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Janet. Any further information or from the?
Thank you. That is all. Yeah, that's all from our committee today.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Next, we'll run over to the Laws and Rules Committee. It also met yesterday, and our chairman, John Griesbeck. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have two items for board consideration this morning that were discussed in our committee yesterday. The first relates to application of the new rule extending from 18 to 30 months conditional exam credit. Just as a short background, in May 2023, the board approved amendments to the rules to move to a 30-month window to pass the examination and began the rulemaking process. The process is complete, and amendments to Rule 0020-01-.06 are effective May 28, 2024. Again, the rule change expands from 18 to 30 months, the time a candidate will be provided to pass all required test sections. Staff believes that implementation of the new rule requires discussion and approval by the board. The staff identified two options for implementation for our consideration yesterday. One was to, on a go-forward basis, whereby any future test sections passed would be assigned expiration dates 30 months from the score release date, or option two, that it would apply to anyone with active credit on the effective date, such that a candidate would receive a new expiration date equal to 30 months from the score release date. After some discussion, the board believed that the second option for implementation is appropriate and recommends that the board approve option two presented so that Rule 0020-01-.06 will apply to candidates with active credit on the effective date. I would propose that as our motion from the committee.
Okay, a motion's been made by the committee. It doesn't require a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I ask for Karen to do a vote for us.
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Sam Bennett, Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
David Crenshaw, Brad Floyd,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe,
Aye.
Rob Vance,
Aye.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
The second item, Mr. Chairman, relates to draft changes to the peer review section of our rules, specifically rules under Chapter 0020-06, Peer Review Program. The draft changes as proposed would amend 5 sections. I'm going to call them .01, .03, .04, .05, and .07, as noted in the red line draft that we have reviewed and is, I think, available again this morning. And then repeal one section, which is .06, peer review results. These are all noted in the bottom of page 1 of the red line copy. One section, .02, would remain unchanged, so that comprises the 7 rules under that chapter. Many of the draft changes update the current processes and expectations and also update language currently used among the various stakeholders. Of note, the draft changes add a requirement that firms authorize the administering entity to provide objective information to the board regarding the status of firms' enrollment in peer review. This information is consistent with the UAA model rules agreed upon by NASBA and AICPA. As part of this process, Wendy reached out to TSCPA and AICPA as well as NASBA for their input and feedback. Yesterday, Wendy reviewed each section of the proposed changes to the rules being amended, highlighting the proposed changes of note. And staff has updated since yesterday several clarification or changes that the committee proposed in the draft changes. I would ask Wendy to maybe highlight those. Now they're on the screen for our review.
Thank you, John. There were a few minor changes proposed by the committee yesterday, and I have them up on the screen to show you where those changes were made. First, it was suggested that in 0020-06-.03, that instead of committee, we instead term that peer review oversight committee. And so we have updated that in the table of contents there on the screen. And I'm also going to scroll down to that section specifically, and we have updated that there as well. And then there's a final spot in the table of contents towards the end of the document that we updated the that terminology as well. Apologize for all the scrolling, but I'll show you here. There was a second table of contents listed, so we have updated that there. You'll see that in the yellow highlight. The second change suggested by the committee related to a clarification in 0020-06-.07 peer review submission. And so in 2, we talk about the documents that are required to be submitted to the board, which isn't a change from the current requirements. But in 3, we are adding a requirement that firms also submit objective information related to the status of their peer review. And in number 5 of that section, we indicate that firms shall authorize the administering entity to provide the board access to the documents and objective information via a secure website process such as the AICPA facilitated state board access. The highlighted language there has been added to make it clear that we're referencing documents and objective information referenced in paragraphs 2 and 3 of this rule. And I believe that concludes the changes made by the committee yesterday.
Correct. As a result, the committee, as a motion, recommends approval of the proposed changes, including amendment and repeal of the one section, to Chapter 0020-06 of the peer review rules as amended by the committee.
All right, thank you, Chairman. That comes to us as a motion, and we don't need a second for it. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just one question. I think in the past, the Joint Operations Committee has specified that they have a preference for boards such as ours to have a public hearing. You know, when we have a rulemaking action such as this, is that going to be a step to be accomplished subsequently?
Yes, so if the board approves this language, we will then ask the board to approve staff to commence the rulemaking process, which will culminate in a rulemaking hearing to allow for additional public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, and we need to have that today for the board for there to be a motion and the board to grant legal counsel and the executive director the authority to set a rulemaking hearing date.
And we're going to do that right after that we look at this. Right now, we're looking at the approved language from the committee. And so we're going to take a look at that. So I do have one question on the approved language where the committee adopted yesterday. I know on 0020-06.04, number 8, when we had some discussion about a firm that does not have offices in Tennessee, and do we need to consider maybe changing that or looking at putting firm or individual due to some of the different stances of different jurisdictions so that would be all inclusive, so it would be very forward? I'll ask Wendy to kind of add more to that if she would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do believe that would be a good change because there are a few states where individuals can perform a test work and ultimately are required to be enrolled in peer review. So that may be a good change. If TSCPA, experts in peer review, have anything to add, we can take those comments as well. But I think that would be fair.
Okay. Any thoughts there from anybody else? Or I would like to make a motion to add to the motion that was brought forth from the committee to change that and add or individual. Do I have a second?
Second on that amendment.
Okay. So I think we have to have a vote on that first before we can come back and then change the motion from the committee. So I'll ask Karen to do a vote on that.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Fred Gilbert.
Aye.
Sam Bennett.
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis.
Janet, do you have a vote for this?
Oh, I'm sorry, I could not hear you all. Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, Karen. So we've amended number 8 of 2006.04 and added "or individual." And now we're looking for approval for the language. And I'll ask one more time, is there any other comments or suggestions from the committee or discussion related to it? Seeing none, then I would ask for a roll call for we approve the language for the changes. Karen?
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Sam Bennett.
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Pam Church.
Aye.
David Crenshaw.
Aye.
Brad Floyd.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
All right. Next up, we have to give authorization to the staff to move forward on the rulemaking hearing and to set a date, as Neil has suggested to us. And so now that's our next motion. If I could have somebody make that motion. Mr. Chairman?
I would move that we would go forward with the rulemaking hearing, authorizing executive
Authorizing
director.
the staff.
Authorizing staff.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none. Karen?
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Sam Bennett.
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Pam Church.
Aye.
David Crenshaw.
Aye.
Brad Floyd.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great job on getting all that out and going through it and getting our rulemaking hearing in process.
I would, Mr. Chairman, just like to again acknowledge the great work on this by our staff, Neil and Wendy and any others involved, and also recognize and acknowledge the contributions of TSCPA and AICPA and others that provided input on this.
Thank you. Great job. Next up, we've got Kevin Monroe and enforcement. Mr. Chairman?
Thanks, Chairman Bonner. Yesterday afternoon in our enforcement committee meetings, we had 17 cases before us, and we discussed all but one, leaving one item, which we'll get to in the second batch under proposed discipline for committee deliberations. But I'll cover off on the actions that the committee undertook and is recommending to the board for the other cases, and then we'll turn around for case 13 and address that as a board. Our first 9 cases are those that are on what we call the consent agenda, meaning that there is really no proposed discipline. There may be a letter of warning, but generally the cases are recommended for closure. They covered topics such as fee disputes, for example, for which the board takes the position that we do not have jurisdiction in fee dispute matters. There are also other allegations with respect to due care, a couple on using CPA designation without an appropriate license. In these kinds of cases, our staff investigator, working with general counsel, worked through to determine what the facts are and then make a recommendation to the board. And so for these 9 cases, the committee's recommendation to the board was that we accept the recommended action item, generally closure for items 2 through 8 and 2 through 9, and a letter of warning for item 1. At that point, I'll stop and submit that as a motion to the board.
All right, a motion has been made by the Committee of Enforcement. Do I have any discussions? All right, Karen?
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Sam Bennett.
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Pam Church.
Aye.
David Crenshaw.
Aye.
Brad Floyd.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Kevin Monroe.
Aye.
Rob Vance.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Now we're going to proceed to the cases in the Enforcement Committee's discussions that result in proposed discipline with respect to our licensees or others who are not licensed but should have been. one of the items of note, and I'll just kind of aggregate this in the discussion, is that during this period, we had several referrals from the Department of Labor with respect to their review of the audit opinions that were submitted for ERISA-based employee benefit plan audits. And the opinions that, the wording of the opinions that were used in these instances was not from the appropriate model report that should have been used in those instances. And so the DOL, Department of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor, when they were conducting their review of submitted audit reports, flagged that and then issued referrals to state boards of accountancy such as Tennessee, but also other states, for practitioners that submitted those reports using the inappropriate or non-current language. In each of those instances, the respondent CPA was required to resubmit the reports using the appropriate language for DOL review and approval, and that was done. In some cases that we have here on those types of cases, we have practitioners that have a prior disciplinary hearing or history, some of which related to ERISA plans. In other cases, it did not relate specifically to ERISA plans. And so what the committee does and what the board does is they consider both aggravating factors, prior disciplinary history being among them, as well as mitigating factors, including cooperation from the respondents on the types of complaints that are brought to bear and are being investigated. And so what I'm going to do is just highlight the cases here where the committee is recommending to the board proposed discipline. I'm going to omit case number 13, which we will deal with separately. The committee did not address that, and so we'll deal with that as a full board. With respect to case number 10, we have, this is one of our DOL audit, ERISA audit work referrals, and the recommendation there is the standard discipline for a $1,000 civil penalty, as well as ERISA audit training for that particular respondent. For case item number 11, also another DOL-related ERISA audit work reporting issue. Here, the recommendation is based on a $1,000 civil penalty. If the entity chooses to perform ERISA work going forward on employee benefit plans, they must notify the board, and each owner must complete 8 hours of ERISA-specific CPE. The next item, item 12, is for an instance where an attest service report was issued without a firm permit, and also the use of the CPA designation without license. The recommendation here is for a $2,000 civil penalty. We're going to pass over item 13 for the moment and return to that separately. Item 14 is one that the committee made a modification on with respect to recommended discipline, and so I'll highlight that. This item was also relating to ERISA employee benefit plan audit work. The original recommendation was for authorization of a formal hearing with the authority to settle via consent order upon the respondent's payment of a civil penalty in the amount of $4,000, and that the respondent agree that should the respondent elect to perform any attest work at any point in the future, they must comply with the following: notify the board of such election prior to performing any such work. 2, if any such attest work includes ERISA-related audit work, each owner responsible for ERISA audit work shall provide proof of completion of 8 hours of ERISA-specific CPE prior to performing any such work. And then in the committee's deliberations yesterday, we added a third component to that recommendation, which was that the entity or respondent needed to comply with appropriate peer review requirements. And so that is the committee-approved recommendation for this particular item. Going to item number 15, this was an SEC referral, a disciplinary referral to the state board, essentially summarized as failure to perform an appropriate audit under GAS. The recommended discipline here is the imposition of a $1,000 civil penalty. Item number 16 is relating to misrepresentation on CPA license renewal and a failure to complete CPE requirements. The committee-approved discipline recommended was a $1,000 civil penalty and the completion of the NASBA ethics course requirements within 90 days. And finally, number 17 is also another ERISA-related audit work reporting violation, and the recommendation there is for the completion of ERISA training with respect to that particular work. So at this point, what I would recommend, Mr. Chairman, is that the board contemplate accepting the committee's recommendations on cases 10 through 17, with the exception of 13, which we'll deal with separately.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the committee has brought that forward as a motion. No second is required. Any discussion? See none. Karen?
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Sam Bennett,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Brad Floyd,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe,
Aye.
Rob Vance,
Aye.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
We have one more case that we will deal with as a sitting board, and that is with respect to item 13.
Mr. Chairman, the mic.
All right, thank you so much. We have one more case that we will deal with as a sitting board that the committee yesterday did not make a recommendation on. The reason for that was that staff yesterday had actually received additional information on that particular case that they wanted to assimilate and determine to what degree, if any, it affected the board's recommendation. And so on this case, I might just turn, if I may, Neil, to you to kind of highlight the particular item and the staff's current recommendation based on the information received.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if you'll recall, this case deals with basically allegations of lack of due care was what the complaint was based on. The complainant said they engaged for services with respondent, and respondent did not provide those services. The evidence was inconclusive on that matter. Respondent denied ever engaging with complainant to conduct services other than a limited return in 2018, and stated that his son may have been the one who completed those services that complainant complained of. But throughout the investigation, another issue came to our attention, which was that respondent used the CPA designation on 2 occasions without a valid license. His license had expired. And so the recent information that we received shed no light on that at all. The recent information was referring to the initial complaint that was submitted regarding the due care allegations, and just provides more detail but doesn't turn the needle at all on that issue at all. Considering that our initial recommendation was based off of the use of the CPA designation on 2 occasions without a license, and considering that the new information does not change that or shed any light on that, I would stick with my initial recommendation to the board. Do you have anything to add on that at all?
No.
Okay, thank you, Neil. And so the recommendation on this case for discipline is to authorize a formal hearing with the authority to settle via consent order upon the respondent's payment of a civil penalty in the amount of $1,000. And so I would offer that as a motion, and I think that one does need a second because that's not coming from the committee.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Do you, I think somewhere in here it refers to the respondent thought maybe his son did the work. What was the relationship there? Did son work for the respondent?
At one time, the son did work for the respondent.
Okay.
That employer-employee relationship ended at the end of '22, and then it became separate but sharing the same office space.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Karen?
Andy Bonner,
Aye.
Greg Gilbert,
Aye.
Sam Bennett,
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
David Crenshaw,
Aye.
Brad Floyd,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Kevin Monroe,
Aye.
Rob Vance,
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Great job as always. Appreciate it. Next is the Executive Committee. The Executive Committee met yesterday. We've got a travel update from our staff that Wendy gave us, is our Executive Director. And then we also went through the fiscal year to date financial results. Those results were brought forth with Wendy went through each item, line item on the report to explain why we had less expenses or more expenses, and went through the financial statements, and so just kind of yesterday we had a full discussion about that, but at this point it's not an action item, but just if there's any questions related to financials or travel. Okay. The next is just updates from NASBA. We actually had a meeting last week at the Board of Directors. It was a very unique meeting in that our own Kevin Monroe sat on an advisory committee to help select our new CEO. And Kevin, you and your committee did an outstanding job. It was they brought forth at the meeting and told us everything that had happened. Our Carlos Barrera actually was chair of that committee, and Lori Tisch was a member of that committee, and they're past chairs for NASBA, and they came and went through in detail everything that your committee did on the selection committee, and it was just an outstanding group of people and very thorough in every way you approached it. I don't know if you have any comments you'd like to add there. Or.
Well, Chairman Bonner, thanks for the kind words. I wish I could claim some credit, but really, Carlos and Lori did just a great job, running that committee, and NASBA and the current chair, Stephanie Saunders, did a great job, in putting that committee together. It was very diverse in every way that you can imagine, particularly in terms of age, from younger, newer practicing CPAs to more experienced CPAs, local, Big Four, public, non-public. I mean, we had an entire cross-section, I think, of the membership that practices in the profession on that committee, and a lot of meeting time and a lot of review time. I would just say, I can't go into any particular detail about individuals, but what I will say is this. I think it's been roughly 12 years since NASBA has gone through a CEO selection process, and so I'm reminded of Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get, and until the applications started coming in, we didn't know what we were going to get. But the beautiful thing about that is we got literally over 100 applications, and the applicants were incredibly well qualified. And so the most difficult job that the committee had was sifting through that to get to basically final recommendations ultimately to the NASBA board. We were an advisory group. The board ultimately is the entity that makes the decisions, as they should. But the uplifting thing here was that the leadership in the profession is vibrant. I mean, we had applicants that were representing state societies, state executive boards, representing national organizations, and just a very good cross-sections of people that were leaders in the profession. And so I just was extremely pleased with the overall caliber and quality of the applicant pool. And while it made the committee's work much, much more difficult, what it hopefully means on the backside is that the outcome of all of that work and NASBA's board's own deliberations in terms of their final selection process is that we will have an outstanding leader going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for that update. And that's from a committee perspective. I mean, they told us at the board meeting that there was 169 applications. They got that down to 15, and they came up with really a matrix to look at to kind of go through, and everybody was given all the applications, and they went through them, and they each marked their tops, and it seemed like there was a really nice line there. Those 15 then worked down to 6. They had in-person interviews on the 6 in Dallas, so a lot of travel for Kevin and their committee, and also then that was down to 3. Here in Nashville, where those 3 final candidates came together, and then the executive committee joined them for those 3 of NASPA, and then from there they went into deliberation, and then they came up with a top choice. That top choice then was brought before the board last Friday, and I'm happy to report today that Dan Dustin has been nominated, or has been nominated by the board to succeed Ken Bishop as CEO of NASPA. And this board right here knows Dan because Dan was here at our last meeting, as Kara kindly reminded us when she gave her presentation. And Dan is extremely knowledgeable, knows the profession, and works with the executive directors across all 55 jurisdictions. And we're just excited to have him and just say, Kevin, you and your committee did a great job. Thank you. The one thing that we did get is we had, as I talked about earlier, the SPP and the pipeline issue was a large discussion last Friday. And it came out of there that NASPA is dedicated to UAA and mobility, and they'll keep their focus there because that still means a lot. We got an update, as Wendy pointed out earlier, that on the ED conference and how they came over and met and took tours, and really we have a liaison from the executive directors that sits on the board. And they got a lot of good input from the executive directors on the SPP and impact and just thoughts on the pipeline. And so that was received, and we had a lot of discussion in that area. We got an update on the CPA exam contract. Wendy actually brought that to us and talked about it. We got some good news in that it seems like enrollment is turning around at universities. Enrollment is up. And we went through those statistics and talked about that. The other good news was they indicated that NASPA is currently working overtime on they're getting an average of 80 new applicants to sit for the first time daily right now, each day. And that has really picked up this spring. And we're not sure what has caused that, if it's the pipeline issues or if it's, but there seems to be a lot of people who are really focused on sitting for the exam the first time, and maybe that's coming from the firms or or the societies or the boards getting the word out. But we were excited to hear that. There's so much activity in the Philippines that NASPA is currently seeing a demand for the exam there, and so they're looking to possibly putting a test site in the Philippines. As Wendy said, when her involvement with BOE, they had met and they updated us on the first quarter results for 2024. I think with tongue in cheek, they were saying, hey, everything's going great so far, but we don't want to jinx it. But they said that in the first quarter of 2024, there was right at 26,000 people who sat for the exam. 1,800 of them candidates were on the discipline area, and they told us that 40% were bar, 39% were TCP, and 21% were ISE on the disciplines, and they were kind of surprised at those results. The Corps had 24,200 sitting. The release of the grades in April, they didn't seem to have any problems at all. I know Wendy will be heading back up and meeting. Is it next week that y'all meet?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Oh, okay. So you're making a mad rush out. So for the June release, and so hopefully that streak will continue, and we'll see more results there. They informed us that NASPA had hired a senior data analyst for a new data project. That they're really coming together to get data out of the NASPA banks and update the software. And we're spending a lot of money at NASPA to do that. It's kind of a vision project. They have been meeting with a focus group, and they've come up with 36 reports that they want to be able to allow the executive directors or the boards to get information in their respective state. They went through the different types of reports, but they really want to make it to where it's more user-friendly so that they can actually change the results for what they want to do the reports for and get more information by state. And so that is coming. They're also looking at possibly coming out with an app for the candidates so that they can use that and try to help answer that. And they're definitely looking at AI to help with the phones and the systems and communication with the candidates once they apply. So that is being done also. I'd already mentioned the CPA licensing subgroup that's coming to work on the details. And of course, that task force is going to meet in May. An update on the CRI, the Credit Relief Initiative. I'd ask Wendy, what's R for? Because I love the name CRI. So they said that 7,700 people were eligible, and still that number of 20% of the candidates that they contacted, at least one part or past, have actually responded or are in the system. We're not sure what's happened with the rest of them, whether there's been any change in that area as far as maybe they've gotten out of public accounting or they've made a career path that doesn't require the CPA exam or anything like that. We were updated that there's 41 states/jurisdictions that have shifted to the date for the scores released as a starting date for the expiration period. And so that's encouraging that everybody's kind of getting on the same track there. And so we had a very detailed, involved meeting, and it was very time-consuming last week, but we got through it. And in our spring meeting, we actually bring in our investment advisors for NASPA, and so we had an investment committee meeting Wednesday afternoon. Then we had the A&F committee meeting Thursday morning. And then we had our executive committee meeting Thursday afternoon, and then all day on Friday for the board. So it was very productive, and a lot of things were talked about and brought up, and of course, big changes with the new CEO. So from my perspective, that's all I have on the NASPA board. I do know that we have a very active board on different committees, and so if anybody has a committee report to give, I'll look around and see.
I'm now on the Communications Committee, and we started last fall. No longer have the pleasure of working with Mr. Monroe over here on the regulatory response, but I'm sure he's carrying on well there. But it's been interesting with communications. We just had Zoom meetings, and since, I guess, October, November, we had a face-to-face meeting last Monday the chair wanted to do. And, the communications department there, I guess led by Tom Kinney, does a lot of things that we don't see, obviously, in terms of the news that goes out. I mean, that blast that went out, Friday night was, I'm sure, heavily worked by them. But also they do a lot of things in providing services and outreach to the various state boards. And two of the services are very prevalent are newsletters and mass emailings. And I think, Wendy, our state, takes advantage of some of those services, and a lot of the states do. And so they're always trying to figure out, okay, why do states not take advantage of this, and why some others do, and there are various reasons. But two new things are sort of new they're focusing on now are producing some videos on behalf of states and also some infographics. And they showed us some examples. I'll pick on Oklahoma. They did a video for candidates and students about the pathway to the CPA, and just in a short video explaining it very well that someone could listen to. And then the infographic was really interesting where, they took 4, 5, 10 pages of, you take the rules we consider and all, and they put it in an infographic on one page, and it's sort of a flow chart type thing, but very easy to follow. And it could be some things that they're going to try and work on those. So to wrap up, next at the meeting, the Eastern Regional, the committee will sponsor a breakfast for members attending, and there'll be some discussion and maybe short presentation about the infographics and the videos for any of those that are there. And so encourage anyone attending these at the East, and probably be a follow-up at the West for Kevin, but to maybe stop in for breakfast and learn more about what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other?
Andy, I'm on what used to be called the computer-based testing. It's the exam administration committee, and we just haven't met since the last time this group met. We are meeting in a couple of weeks, and I imagine we'll be talking about any considerations with the transition to the new format. Wendy knows more from her role in that committee as well as with ASCPA. But may I ask a question? You referred to the data reports that NAS was working on. Will they restart the reports that give a breakdown by college or university? We haven't had those in about, 3 years. The pass rate by college.
I know that it will. And Wendy, I'll let Wendy address that because she got an update on that too.
Yeah, so we got an update at the Executive Directors Conference that they do plan to start distributing that again, and I believe they're going to go backwards. So they'll fill in the missing data as well. Good news for everybody in the audience.
Yeah, a lot of great comments in that area. The NAS was going to spend a lot of money to bring that up to date and to really get a lot of good information that's needed. And so, and colleges was one of the things that they pointed out, the scores and pass rates and so forth. So, so I know that's coming. Any other?
Just a brief word on the Regulatory Response Committee, which is not functioning as well as it had been when John was a member here. But interestingly, we had a meeting actually on Monday morning. And there is some international standard setting body work done on partly through the ethics side, but partly through the standard setting side on sustainability accounting and reporting. And so the primary issue that the committee discussed this week related to some proposed standards in that arena. And the big dilemma here from a standard setting process is, if non-public accounting practitioners, and let's say in the sustainability arena, are going to practice in this and issue some type of, I guess, for lack of a better word, a test report on sustainability principles or matters. For example, what independent standards should they follow, and should they be independent? And so this set of standards was designed to kind of lay out that template. And while it looked reasonably good on paper, the question is, how is that enforceable across the various jurisdictions worldwide with respect to practitioners that do not have CPA licenses and never will? And so there's a bunch of kind of thorny issues around that, and who has jurisdiction, what does that mean, what are the responsibilities of the practitioners with respect to independence, and that's very unsettled from a regulatory standpoint. And we kind of delved deep into that forest on Monday, and I'm not sure we resolved everything there, but there is a lot of activity revving up both in the U.S. but particularly worldwide with respect to sustainability standards, accounting or I wouldn't say accounting, but attestation or equivalent types of standards that are going to be fascinating to see how they unfold over the decades to come.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because in Peak, I currently sit on Peak, and we're getting a lot of comments there trying to bring in the international standards to the American standards. And we went from trying to have conformity to now harmonizing. So that's how difficult a project it is. And sustainability has been a big factor, that independence we actually had a meeting yesterday that I actually missed while I was driving here. It's still being kind of tossed around, trying to come up with an answer for that. Any other comments? I know Wendy mentioned this earlier, but if you're not on a committee with NASPA, you still have an opportunity to jump on a committee. As a board member, it really is a lot of things that we're dealing with here in Tennessee. It's great to have Tennessee board members who have input, and I think everybody who's on a committee, but take a look at that. There's some really good committees out there. And, you know, at least I can say that, you know, Tennessee's is being heard on everybody volunteering and being a part of that. And I appreciate everybody's joining those committees and the time that it takes, because it does take a lot of time. I know Kevin has spent a lot of time here in the last 3 months, but it's a lot of time. But at the same time, it helps represent Tennessee. And so I appreciate that. Next up, we've got the legislative update. I'll turn it over to Neil and let him take over. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First update that I have for you is House Bill 1859. This was signed by the governor on April 23rd. This deals with applicants falling under the Fresh Start Act, and this is what Kara referenced earlier. It adds a new subsection. It says the licensing authority shall not use a vague term in its consideration and decision under the Fresh Start Act, including good moral character or character and fitness, without also providing an explanation of how a prior conviction directly relates to the applicable occupation, profession, business, or trade, if such prior conviction serves as a basis for the decision of the board. So when we have had applicants in the past under the Fresh Start Act with convictions, we've always looked at the threshold inquiry that's found in Tennessee Code 62-1-106. It says the certificate of a certified public accountant shall be granted to persons of good moral character, there's that phrase, who meet the education, experience, and examination requirements, and who make application for a certificate. Good moral character for purposes of this section means lack of a history of dishonest or felonious acts. So we first look at whether an applicant's conviction results in a determination of lack of good moral character under the above definition. And if the board determines the conviction involved lack of good moral character, the board would then consider the conviction under the Fresh Start Act factors to determine whether the conviction was directly related to the profession, and if so, whether the applicant should be denied. So for Fresh Start Act purposes, to deny a license due to a past criminal conviction, it's always been the case that the conviction has to directly relate to the profession. The key with this new bill is that it requires an explanation of how the conviction relates to the profession. So in the final analysis, this really isn't going to change much. It's not going to be a major change from our current practice of what we do when a license is denied, as long as there's an explanation provided as to how the conviction relates directly to the profession. Of course, legal counsel will be there to guide you through those discussions as we move forward under this new statute. The next update is Senate Bill 2588 as amended. This is currently with the governor for action. This requires all state entities and programs that are administratively attached to the Division of Regulatory Boards to issue advisory private letter rulings to any affected person who is certified or licensed by such program and who makes a request regarding any matters within the program's jurisdiction. The private letter ruling only affects the person making the inquiry and requesting the private letter ruling, and has no precedential value for any other inquiry or future case. So my take on this is that it's yet to be fleshed out, but programs will be the issuing authority for these private letter rulings, obviously with heavy assistance in the drafting of legal to make sure it reflects the board's intent. But we do anticipate that these requests are going to come before the board for discussion and decision, and then with the advice of legal counsel, drafting those private letter rulings and making sure that they reflect the board's intent. So we're still in the initial stages of this, so I would say that's just to be on your radar, more to follow as we see exactly how this is going to play out in practice.
Can you give us an example of what a private letter ruling might be?
So there are some entities that issue, can't remember off the top of my head, but there are some governmental entities, for instance, that will issue like advisory opinions. Just trying to think of if we had a CPA come to the board and make a request for maybe something that they've been requested by a client to do. And is this within the scope of practice of a CPA? Is this something I'm allowed to do? That person could make a request. That's just an example out of many, but of many possibilities. But that person could, let's say, make a request for an advisory opinion, an advisory ruling from the board as to whether they are authorized under law and statute to proceed with whatever it might be. Does that fall within the practice of a CPA? That's just one example.
I believe, Neil, like at a federal level, the IRS would be issuing private letter rulings on different tax scenarios, things like that. Is that a good example, too?
I think that's right, and I think the SEC may do that as well. I'm sure there are a number of other possible, again, it's any matter within the jurisdiction of the board that someone, if they have a question about something, they could request and the board to issue such an opinion or such a ruling to make sure that they're within the confines of what they should and should not be doing as a licensee.
Any other questions for Neil?
That's all I've got.
Neil, thank you for that update. Appreciate it. We've entered the public comment period now, and I would ask Wendy and Karen to let us know if anybody signed up or text on our chat box to have any comments.
We do have Emily Odell with us online, and she would like to have public comment. Emily, the stage is yours.
Go ahead, Amy.
Hi.
Hello.
Can y'all hear me and see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay. All right, great. Well, nice to be here. Long-time listener, first time attending. But my name is Emily Odell. I am the director of the Master of Accountancy program at Vanderbilt University. So I've talked to a few of you in the room. And I've been with Vandy for about 10 years. Prior to that, I was in Big Four for about 7 years. Not an accounting major, but somehow I have gotten on this path. I'm a huge advocate of bringing people into the profession. So I bring in students from a non-accounting background. If you're not familiar with our program, we designed it for non-accounting majors. So we have brought in people from different academic backgrounds and prepared them to enter public accounting. We have a great success rate. Our students are fantastic. I love my job. But I wanted to bring up to your attention, I don't know if you've heard the angst. I know we have a new CPA portal. Getting approved to sit for the CPA exam has been a part-time job for me and my students. And we have a number of my students who are pulling out of the Tennessee application to go to Mississippi, Kentucky, Illinois, North Carolina. So they don't use NASBA. I know it's a new portal. We've had, they say 8 weeks. So we've reached the 8-week mark. We applied back, I think, in January. But we're having issues with transcripts not being accepted, even though they have proof that they've been uploaded. Some people have just been straight up denied with no information, and then we go back to them. The certificate of enrollment doesn't have enough lines for our classes, so we have to submit a second sheet, but then the second sheet wasn't accepted, so we had to handwrite it on. The seal is raised, so it doesn't show up on the scan, so I took pictures of it and sent it to all the students. There's just a lot of issues. This is not something that I think we're going to fix right now. But I am worried because my students are spending money. They've applied for Tennessee. They're having to pay to apply to another state to get approved within a week. And then they'll have to pay again to get their scores transferred back to Tennessee. So I bring this up just because, this is something I deal with every day. I would love to be involved in a conversation with anybody. I like to find solutions to problems. I know my students for the most part, are qualified for Tennessee because we stay on top of the resources, or we stay on top of the legislation. I don't know for all 55 jurisdictions, but what we're finding is the students that are applying through states that have to use the NASBA, that we have the NASBA contract, there's just a lot of delays, and we're not really sure, how to move forward, and the amount of money we're spending, the extra amount of money we're spending to just get to the CPA exam has been discouraging for my students. That's not going to stop me from, going to all these liberal arts schools and talking to economics majors about how great public accounting is and entering the profession. But it is a barrier for something that our students do really well on. They're just having an extremely difficult time to get anything sent through the system. And then the process will get restarted if, they don't have the transcript and we have to start all over. So our students take all 4 parts over the summer. They start in May and they will finish at the end of August. So now we're in a situation where the testing centers in Tennessee or Nashville are filled up. They're not approved, so they'll have to drive to Huntsville. Some will just go to Atlanta. But there's a significant barrier for them to get to the CPA exam. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. Again, I know we're going to change some things on our end. We'll start the process back in August to get us to that June when we first sit for the first part. But I wanted to bring it to your attention and then maybe NASBA's attention as well.
Well, Emily, thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Number one, thank you for all that you do for the profession at Vanderbilt and for what you're doing to bring people to the CPA profession. We definitely need members, more people coming in. So we're very excited about what you're doing at Vanderbilt. Number two is that what you're experiencing is unacceptable, period. And I would ask that if Wendy doesn't have your information, that send it to Wendy. I will personally take that back to NASBA as a board member there. And each one of your points that you brought up today, we will talk to them about, and I will have them reach out to you immediately because that's just something that's not acceptable. Because in Tennessee, it should run better.
It's just right, and Tennessee is what I'm dealing with the most. But any other states, in Massachusetts, we're having a similar issue. Any of the states that they're going through NASBA, the states that they go through the board. So North Carolina, I had some student withdraw on Friday and they got approved this morning by North Carolina. So it's just a significant barrier. So I appreciate that. I think I do actually have Wendy's information. We spoke a few years ago about another issue that I brought to y'all's attention. But I would love to focus on this and help my students and then help everybody else that's applying through those NASBA states.
Wendy?
Thank you, Emily, for coming to this meeting and bringing up these concerns. And your students aren't the only ones that we've heard this from, so it's not unique to Vanderbilt. But I would agree with Chairman Bonner that we are frustrated from a staff perspective as well. And so we can use your comments as well as some other specifics to try to get NASBA to come to the table with some solutions to help all of us in this process.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. We appreciate
That's
you.
all I had.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Have a good day.
You too. Any others for public comment?
I do not see anything else.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy. Emily raised a great point. NASBA's been trying to fix that, and it looks like it's not fixed, and it looks like that we need to take that back and do something about it verbally as a board. And so I will get with Wendy, and we will definitely get with NASBA to talk about that. That's just not acceptable, period. I agree. That's too much time, cost to Tennessee residents, and we need to take a hard look at that. Service recognition. Just sometimes you work with some amazing people, and I personally think that we just have an amazing board here. We do have 2 people who will be transitioning off after years of service. I will say this may not be their last meeting, because if the governor does not appoint somebody to replace them between now and our July meeting, then obviously we would love to have them come back. But just in case, we want to recognize two people. Janet, you're looking great there. Wish you were here in person so we could give you a hug and say thank you for all that you have done. We have something here for you as being a board member from 2015 to 2024. My goodness, how fast it flies by. Both of y'all have the distinct honor of coming in with our executive director. So she has been here the whole time with y'all, and so that's unique. You've been instrumental in your leadership, not only at the board, but your involvement with NASPA and just the profession itself. You always bring a great perspective to the meetings. Our little plaque here, it says that presented to Janet Booker Davis in recognition of the appreciation for your significant contribution and leadership to the CPA profession and the Tennessee Board of Accountancy. So thank you for all that you have done. I'm sure other people have something here to say too, but I was going to give you the moment to kind of have the floor and appreciate all that you've done for us.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Bonner. Sorry I could not be there in person as well. I think I have a cold. I was having to be out of town to support family in a funeral this past weekend, and I think that didn't help either. But I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to serve on the board. I was actually in Indianapolis, Indiana for this service I was just talking about. And coincidentally, 40 years ago, almost to this day, I received my letter from the, I guess it's the Indiana group, indicating that I had passed my last section of the exam. So I thought that was interesting that I was back in that city nearly to the day that I passed the exam in Indianapolis, and I got reciprocity here in Tennessee to serve, and ended up knowing Wendy when she was with the Tennessee Society of CPAs, and doing some peer review work with her, helping me with my peer review types of things while she was there. But it has been just a wonderful opportunity to have been of service to a profession that's given me so much. And I'm thankful to God to have had the opportunity, thankful to have worked and served with all of you. And I know you all will continue to do great things to protect the public and the profession. And I'm grateful and just thank you so much.
Any comments from any of the other board? Brad?
Go ahead.
Janet, I just want to add my congratulations and thanks. It seems like yesterday when you were approached and asked to serve. Time flies, but the passion that you have brought to the service on this board is much appreciated. That your willingness to ask the tough questions and address the tough issues is very, very important for this board, and I think you serve an example and for future board members, and your shoes will be very, very tough to fill here. But thanks again. Personally, I appreciate all you've done for me and this board, and we wish you the best going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad.
Janet, I feel like you've been my buddy because we got to sit together for a long time. And COVID sort of.
Yes, my buddy.
No, and COVID interrupted that, and I hated it. But I just want to say, I have seen you take a stance after lots of people had spoken, maybe, and then you brought in a different, fresh perspective and just gave a lot of enlightenment on an issue, and you are so passionate about equity and treating all people fairly. And I thank you for that. So wish you well.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Janet, this is John. I've only met you once. I came on during COVID, and so we didn't meet, and you were not able to attend, and so I'm sorry for that. Congrats on your 40 years. I'm just going to ditto sort of what Pam said. She took my words. What always has come through in my mind is your compassion and sense of fairness for all parties. Your comments and your suggestions always came from that perspective, and you know, in a highly technical, professional environment, that's much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
And Janet, this is Kevin Monroe. I just echo others' comments. And, you know, the thing that I take away from our service together, for which I and my colleagues have just been blessed to serve with you, is that in every deliberation, and sometimes the issues that we get into are not easy to resolve, or there might be different points of view or what have you, particularly in disciplinary cases or particularly in licensing cases that kind of could go one way or the other. You know, there was no doubt in my mind that you were sitting there trying to look at it not only from the board's perspective, but also from the individual respondent's perspective and say, what is fair in this particular, how do we do right by people? And that is just something that will stick with me, I hope, for the rest of my life, because I really enjoyed your passion for getting right at that. It's like, you know, we need to make the right decision. We need to protect the public interest, but we also need to be concerned about the respondent as well as the complainant or the applicant for on a licensure issue or whatever it may be. And you've just, you know, there's just never, ever been any doubt that, you know, we're going to arrive at a well-informed view and a better informed view because of your comments and perspectives. And so I just thank you for that and have tremendously enjoyed serving with you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I have so enjoyed serving with you as well. You've been, just a great contributor to this board. Thanks so much.
Janet, as you mentioned, or as Andy may have mentioned, you know, I think your first meeting might have been the meeting I was hired at. So we kind of came into this together. So I echo everyone else's comments. I also want to acknowledge all of the outside work that you did with NASBA. So you participated in a pretty intensive work on the Examination Review Board, which is the group that oversees or is kind of the internal audit function of the exam, and also served on NASBA's nominating committee for the Southeast. So, you know, you took the reins when you came on this board and said, how can I know more about this? How can I participate? How can I serve? And I will certainly miss you. In all facets, from NASBA service to board service. So best wishes to you going forward.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I remember, we went to the, I guess, first, a lot of us went to the, first NASBA meeting. And I think you and I maybe it was just you and I who went to that one together in 2015. So, but I'll be in touch. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Any others?
Janet, thank you so much. This is Greg. Thank you so much for all of your service. I guess I'm in a bit of the same situation maybe as John. We've not got to do many meetings together in person, but I certainly appreciate your perspective and your leadership. I was just thinking through that yesterday as you were leading the licensing committee, and thank you for all the work that you've done on that. You and I have attended several NASBA meetings. Unfortunately, I was in person and you were virtual, so we didn't really get to talk at those NASBA meetings. But thank you for, as Wendy said, all the work you've done, not only for this board, but also on behalf of NASBA. And I wish you the very best going forward.
Thank you so much.
Well, once again, thank you. It has been an honor and a privilege for all of us to serve with you. And just again, thank you for your contribution and leadership on behalf of the board.
Well, thank you. It's been my honor, and I'm just grateful and thankful to God that I was able to include this in my journey, or God allowed this in my journey. So thanks so much to all of you, and I wish all of you the very best in your future endeavors and continuing on the board, and just be well, be safe.
Thank you. We have one more retiring board member, and he is not able to be present today. Larry has had some health issues, and knowing Larry, when this is over with, at some point when he gets to feeling better, that he will pop up this replay. And so even though he's not here in person, I would like to go ahead and kind of do the same thing where if you have anything to say, please do, because I know he'll be going back and auditing the transcripts and seeing what everybody said, and I'm going to encourage it for him because I think it would be uplifting for him. But Larry, we have an award here for you that on behalf of the Board of Accountancy that says, in recognition of the appreciation of your significant contribution and leadership for the CPA profession here in Tennessee, and specifically with the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy. Larry came in at the same time in 2015 through 2024. It has just been my pleasure and privilege to serve with him. Even though I didn't get to ride back and forth with Janet's in Nashville, Larry was always a member of the car team that we get in and drive, and have known Larry for a long time and doing bank audits. And so we just, to get to know him as a person and his family, it's just been a real honor and a privilege for me to be a part of that. Then to get here and see his leadership on the board. It was amazing to me how he audited everything that we brought forth to the board, and even when he was doing any type of leadership role in the minutes, or he would go back and he would go through the minutes to verify from the visual that we have online. And just so detailed. Then I also had the privilege of working with him in NASPA, where he was our regional director for the Southeast region, and just brought a lot of leadership there. And then further got to work with him on the A&F committee at NASPA. So he's been very active in NASPA on behalf of Tennessee. He was very active for the Southeast region, and got to know a lot of the executive directors and chairs across the Southeastern region, and just a great individual, a great leader, and a great contributor to the Board of Accountancy. So thank you, Larry. Thank you for all that you have done for us here at the board. And I'll open that back up to other comments.
Mr. Chairman, Larry, I also thank you. As Andy mentioned, I don't know that we got the privilege of riding with you, but initially when I was on the board, Larry picked me up and brought me to the meetings and showed me which hotel to stay at and where this building was, and kind of oriented me. And we didn't have meetings, but he just talked to me about the board and the processes and so forth. But Larry has been a tremendous friend and very helpful in my role in serving this board. And Larry, we just wish you continued recovery from your illness.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd just add, this is Kevin Monroe. I think I joined the board a year or so after you did, and I still refer to this section of the boardroom as Larry's corner. I was seatmates with Larry and Miss Judy Weatherby here for the first few years that I served on the board, and so there were Fresca drinks and sweets that were being provided by Miss Weatherby that Larry really enjoyed, and I just you could not chat with Larry without hearing about grandchildren or seeing pictures of grandchildren. And so they bring such delight to Larry and his family. But Larry, your service to the profession, and particularly to this board and to NASBA, but also to the Tennessee Society and to just the profession, have just been stellar. And it is my most fervent prayer for quick and full healing and recovery. And just know that we are just grateful and blessed by your service professionally and by you as a person, and just want to wish you the very best.
Pam, and then Janet after you.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Janet. When I think of Larry, I think of his being such a stickler for detail and facts and precedent. So I thought it's a good thing that he and Wendy developed such a close, warm friendship, because he sure created some work for her, because he would always have her going back and looking up some prior case or facts or rules. But that's because he's absolutely passionate about doing it right on this board and for this profession. And Larry, I just wish you the best.
Larry, this is Janet. As Andy said, we started on the board at the same time, went through the new board member orientation together at the 2015, I think, board meeting. And yeah, I could echo what, Pam and some of the others have said, that, you, such attention to detail, such thoughtful and constructive and just great comments to help the profession be better and to help this board be better. I have been praying constantly for your healing, and I will continue to do that. And just wish you well, and just thank you for being a good friend, a great board member, and just wish you well.
Larry, this is John. I would just add briefly that, anytime we serve on an organization like this, I always think, hopefully when I go off, it can be said that I made it better. I did such a job that the board got better, and Larry Elmore certainly made this board better for all the contributions he made. And we're just continuing to pray and offer well wishes for you, and wish you the best, and can't wait to see you again.
Everyone made such great comments, but John, I'll piggyback on that. I mean, and Janet can attest to this too. This in the past 9 years, this board has seen a lot and been through a lot. And thank you to Larry, to Janet, and really to all of you for making it that way. We have really made some improvements over the tenure of Janet and Larry, and so I appreciate that service. And personally, very happy to have gotten to know Larry and his attention to detail. You always want a board member who's invested and cares about what they are doing, and he certainly rose to that occasion and certainly made some extra work for us over here. But we truly appreciate that, and the outcome was simply better protection of the public and service to the profession. And so I will certainly miss you, Larry. I know you won't be a stranger, and also my prayers for complete healing of your health issues. So thank you, Larry.
All right, Larry, once again, thank you. You're definitely in our thoughts and prayers for continued the healing process. I hope that you can come sometime after for one of the other meetings and be here, and Janet, you too, and just get hugs from all of us to say thank you. Both of y'all have done an outstanding job. Some really big shoes to fill, quite honestly. So for the new directors that may be coming in to fill your shoes, a lot is expected in these two vacancies, and we're sure that you'll be up to the task, but we're losing two really good people here, and we just appreciate both of you and all that you've done. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, we could take a break or we could adjourn. I mean, we didn't get a break in, but I got Wendy here for some.
I would just like to say one additional, or share one additional piece of information with the board. Neil has been our attorney for the past year, and he has recently submitted his resignation. So this will be his last meeting with us. And I just appreciate your commitment and assistance over the past year. You have certainly delved into this profession and taken the bull by the horns, so appreciate your efforts.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you, Wendy, and it's been a pleasure working with you and with Duke and all of you as board members. It's been an honor, and I just thank you. I've learned a lot in this role, and I'm going to carry that with me to my next role. So thank you all very much.
Well, you're definitely going to be missed here at the board. We appreciate all your input. You've been a true leader. We've really relied on you to take us down that walk of what we can do and can't do, and we're going to miss that very immensely. So thank you for all that you've done for the Tennessee Board.
Thank you so much. It's been an honor.
I also promised Laura Martin, who was with us yesterday, she wanted to make sure that you all knew that she and Taylor would be covering until they find someone new, and to not be concerned about legal representation, that is being handled on multiple fronts.
Any other comments or any other business items? Well, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Did you have? Okay, in a second?
Second.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, and appreciate all the hard work from our staff, and just appreciate the coming together, but we did get a little bit of time back today, so thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.